Next in Watertown, Al, Independent Line. Hi there.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Let me do you a little history, Mr. Kane, on what all politician commissions have given us. They've given us bankrupted Social Security, $100 trillion in debt, endless wars, the investigations on Hillary's emails, Benghazi, the 2008 financial crisis. So when you say you want to go bipartisan, no. We have a uniparty in Washington. You guys are all in it, the Democrats and Republicans together.
This is Ryan. Next up, Democrats Line. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. Sir, thanks for your work, first of all. Thanks for C-SPAN. My degree is in economics, but I'm also very familiar with the events of 9/11. I do not appreciate the report that you guys put out. There's a book called 9/11 Commission, Omissions and Distortions. Among the chief ones is you do not explain how the buildings fell down. The commission stops its reporting at the initiation of collapse.
Caller, don't want to revisit history, but, you know, as far as the question for a commission being looked at the January 6th, do you have something specific that?
I'm wondering if when it comes to January 6th, which I'm also very interested in, if you're going to stop the timeline at a similar point, let's say when the first protesters get inside the Capitol.
That's Ryan there in Holland, Michigan. To that.
Washington Journal continues.
Our first guest is Tom Kane. He served as the former chair of the 9/11 Commission. He also is a member of the Bipartisan Policy Center on the Task Force of Terrorism and Ideology, co-chair, and the former governor of New Jersey. Governor Kane, thanks for giving us your time this morning.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
You wrote a letter to President Biden and Vice President Harris and others about this idea of a commission looking at the events of January 6th. Can you give us a gist of the letter and why you wrote it?
Well, we looked at this event on the 6th and thought it was a real violation of our democracy, really. Something never happened before. I don't think that Capitol had been invaded like that since the British in 1812. This was our own citizens. So why did it happen? How did it happen? What are the facts? And what can we do to make sure it never, ever happens again? And so our feeling was that the 9/11 Commission worked. It made 41 recommendations, which were basically accepted, most 40 of them by the American people in the Congress. And because of that, we're a lot safer. We haven't had an event like that since 9/11, and it worked. So why not do something like that again to get to the bottom of this? Because we don't want this to ever, ever happen again.
Ben, from your experiences with the commission, what would you suggest first off with this commission being proposed in the Congress to take a look at these issues?
Well, first of all, it's got to be truly bipartisan. If you're not going to make a bipartisan commission, if you're not going to appoint men and women who are really going to go across the aisle and talk to each other and come up with a solution that both sides can buy, then don't do it. So you got to have it bipartisan. Secondly, you got to give it enough time to do its job. Then you got to give it enough money to do the job, and make it visible all the way through, so that people know exactly what's happening step by step. And hopefully they can do this, let the American people know exactly what happened, how it happened, and why it happened, and we can set up some mechanisms to make sure it never happens again. And the Capitol never is that poorly defended, frankly.
Your commission had 10 members and nearly 80 full-time employees. It reviewed more than 2 million pages of documents. It conducted 1,200 interviews and 12 public hearings as well. It took 20 months to compile a 570-page, 14-chapter report, and then you had mentioned those 41 recommendations for security agencies. Then, with that in mind, Governor, then as far as the scope, you said it had to be bipartisan in nature, but what keeps it from becoming political, and what did you learn from your experiences there?
Well, it's all up to the members. I mean, it's not hard to make. It's very hard to keep things bipartisan. It's not hard to make them partisan. So it's the men and women who are appointed to the commission. That's the key. And if they want to keep it bipartisan, they will. If they talk to each other, if they respect each other, if they respect each other's ideas, and go along that way, then the American people will be well served. And that's why it's so very, very important that these men and women have a record, frankly, a record in their lives of working across the aisle and putting country above party.
In your mind, who are the best candidates for these positions then to fill on the commission?
Well, I've got some, and I've passed on some to some of the people who might be doing the appointment, but you can't make those names public. Not at this point.
Well, then in terms of their experiences, what type of scope of experience do you think makes a good candidate to serve?
Well, a variety of experiences. I mean, somebody could have served in the legislature, in one branch of Congress or other. It can't be people who are serving now, and it can't be anybody who has ambitions to climb up the political ladder. So in the 9/11 Commission, we used to talk of ourselves as a bunch of has-beens. And those kind of people ain't what you're looking for. Now, there are some wonderful former governors out there. There's some wonderful mayors and attorney generals. You don't have to confine ourselves to Washington. There are people who worked in the Bush administration or the Obama administration or the Clinton administration. You have a breadth of people to pick from. And I know that if with the right motivation, that the Congress can find men and women who can do this job.
Our guest with us, and if you want to ask him questions about this commission to investigate the attack on the U.S. Capitol, and you want to ask him questions considering his experience with the 9/11 Commission, you can call us, 202-748-8001 for Republicans, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, and 202-748-8002 for Independents. You can text us your thoughts at 202-748-8003. You can post on Twitter and Facebook as well. Governor, what powers should this commission have in order to do its best work?
It's got to have subpoena power. Hopefully, they have to use it. We almost never used it. We used it once when one of the agencies lied to us, so we called them back and made them tell the truth. But if you don't have subpoena power, you find a lot of people just say, we're not going to bother to come and talk to you. If you have subpoena power, then they'll come, because they know if they're not coming, you're going to make them come. So that's the main power you need.
And then, in your mind, what areas should be, subject to subpoena as far as groups, people, specifics? In your mind, who should they be talking to?
The whole breadth of anybody who's was involved in this attack on the Capitol. Obviously, we want to answer questions. I've read a lot of accounts, and they differ. Was this planned ahead of time? Did people get in little groups and say, we're going to go and we're going to invade the Capitol? That's what we're going to do, and let's take 3 weeks to plan it? Was it spontaneous? Was it sort of incited at the time? Why was it the Capitol was so poorly defended? At the time, you had a huge amount of people there, and there were less people protecting the Capitol and protecting the athletic event in this country. So, there's a whole series of questions, and as they get one question answered, it'll lead to another. And the bottom line is, the American people deserve a full report for what happened, and then recommendations out of that, what happened, to make sure it never happens again. In your mind, should former President Trump be subpoenaed? Hopefully you don't have to subpoena anybody. But he's one of the people you have to question. On the 9/11 Commission, we questioned the present president, the present vice president, the former president. So I think you've got to have a wide-ranging, the ability to call whoever has information that you need to get to do your report.
More with our guests as we go through up of calls from you. This is Robert in Kentucky, Republican line. You are first up with Tom Kean, former chair of the 9/11 Commission. Robert, good morning. Go ahead.
Yes, I do remember Mr. Tom Kean, so I respect him because I love President Bush. He was my favorite president. But he must have read my mind, he brought up some very interesting points that he said that the American people do need truth about what come out on both sides. And it's clearly that both sides if this was planned, and he says it seems to be planned. If you watch the tape, the Trump supporters were on the front of the Capitol. You can clearly see that there was a line of people that come behind the people. They were looking like, what is going on? Then a guy tries to break through the Capitol window with a shield, and it's clearly on TV that day. Now, how long did it take him to get in there? And was that the only window breached? And I agree with him, and God bless him for bringing up that, and God bless you, Pedro.
Robert in Kentucky. Governor, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's, you got to get all that evidence. You got to find exactly what happened and tell the American people about it, and then move to prevent it in the future. That's the idea.
James in Wilson, North Carolina, Democrats line. You're next up. Hello.
Good morning, C-SPAN. Good morning, Governor. You used to be my governor. I'm here in North Carolina now. I know you know what you're talking about. I see everything what Trump done. He asked the people to go down and protest, and they went in and they broke in, and one said that Nancy Pelosi death, he went through all the mail and everything. And I see one with a laptop. And I know you know what you're talking about. Governor, you have been a good governor. I'm a Democrat. And when I was in New Jersey, you were the best governor ever been. And I'm tell you, Jim Florio would have sorry for me ever had. You have a good one, Governor. Love you right on.
Thank you.
Tennessee is next in Watertown. Al, independent line. Hi there.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Let me do you a little history, Mr. Kane, on what all politician commissions have given us. They've given us bankrupted Social Security, $100 trillion in debt, endless wars, the investigations on Hillary's emails, Benghazi, the 2008 financial crisis. So when you say you want to go bipartisan, no. We have a uniparty in Washington. You guys are all in it, the Democrats and Republicans together. If you'd had legitimate investigations and a legitimate government, Donald Trump could never have gotten elected, but he did. And the reason he got elected is because guys like you think in terms of Democrats and Republicans. It's not going to work. And if you do have nothing but politicians on your commission, nobody's going to believe it.
Okay. Al calling for the governor. Governor, go ahead.
No, I just, look, I'm using a 9/11 commission, which I chaired with Lee Hamilton as my vice chair, as an example. There are a lot of commissions that haven't worked. Many of the investigations you're talking about were not commission investigations, but they're congressional investigations. Congress has a problem with those because they're very highly structured to Congress. They have a lot of other things to do. The committees get very partisan. I'm talking about something quite different. The 9/11 Commission worked. Look, we did our work. The American people accepted it. The report we wrote is still a college textbook in colleges, so nobody questioned it. And we made recommendations which made the American people safer. I mean, we haven't had an attack like 9/11 since because we reorganized the whole intelligence system in this country to make us safer. I'm saying this is such a serious event that that kind of effort again is needed, and the kind of recommendations to keep our country safer.
Your commission, eventually, you had mentioned there's 41 recommendations. How many of those recommendations were acted upon?
40. The only one wasn't acted on was we wanted to reform the Congress a bit, and Congress didn't want to reform itself. So that one is not acted on. 40 of them were, and so one of the largest reorganizations of the American government in history, and it worked. We haven't had a problem since.
When it comes to that
magnitude.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
No, I'm finished.
So when it comes then to the staff that will eventually doing the bulk of the work, what's the recommendation as far as numbers or money that's going to be involved to make this happen?
Well, I don't think you need an extensive work. I mean, in the 9/11 Commission, we had to have staff members go to Saudi Arabia to investigate. We had to send them all over the world to really find out the seeds of the problems that occurred with Al Qaeda and all of that. This is narrower. So you probably don't need a staff that size. But what you do need is a staff that mirrors the commission. You don't need staff who've worked in Republican campaigns or Democratic campaigns. I mean, you've got to have people who are respected for their expertise, who are knowledgeable, whose work can be trusted, and who are, if they've been Republicans or Democrats, that's fine. But I don't want them that partisan. So
as far as that's concerned, then, do they have to come outside of Washington? And how much of the commission folks there were outside of Washington for your commission?
Some of them were outside of Washington, some of them were inside of Washington, but it was they were all people who had done the job. I mean, there were people who but had not been involved. Here's where we made the difference. We said, look, we know most people are the Republicans or Democrats, some independents, but a lot of people are Republicans. That's fine. We don't mind what party you belong to. But if you worked in a recent campaign of any sort, for Republicans or Democrats, then we can't have you because you've been partisan too recently. But if you've got the expertise, we want you, and we screened that staff very, very hard, and I was very proud of them and the work they did.
Tom Kean, the former chair of the 9/11 Commission, he served in that position from 2002 to 2004, our guest. Governor, somebody asked the question about those people that eventually will come in front of this commission, if they should be questioned under oath.
Yes. Yeah, we questioned everybody under oath.
From John in Louisiana, Republican line. Hello.
Yes, Governor. I think we need a big reality check. Comparing 9/11 Commission to this is 3,000 deaths to 2. You know, you guys are got to get, you know, and the idea that anybody thinks this is going to be anything other than partisan has been asleep in the last 25 years with the media, all one side. Do you really think Nancy Pelosi is going to let anything happen that does not have a big slant to the left? If it is, you guys are either on drugs or you've been asleep for about the last 30 years. But it's disgusting to hear you compare the 9/11 3,000 deaths with an attack on a building in Washington, D.C. And last thing I have to say, the U.S. Capitol is not the symbol of the democracy. Democracy in this great nation exists in the hearts and minds of 350 million citizens, not some damn building.
That's John. Hello. Thank you, John. And Governor, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, John, look, I understand it does have to survive in our hearts. But look, you can't compare 9/11 as an event and with the attack in the Capitol. They're totally different things. But I am saying, look, I grew up in Washington because my father was elected to the United States Congress. I grew up to revere that Capitol because I remember walking around it and you could see where Clay sat and where Webster sat. You could see where John Quincy Adams made a speech as he died, attacking slavery. You saw the place where Brooks attacked Sumner. I mean, you saw, and I knew the people that they now named buildings after. I remember Sam Rabin coming to our house. I remember Everett Dirksen staying at our house, and so I've taken my grandchildren around there. And as you see where these events in American history happened, you revere the democracy because of the way they happen and the survival of this country. And so I'm not saying they're similar events in any way at all, but I'm saying the Capitol represents to many people a democracy, not only here, but around the world. And the way it was violated made me sick to my stomach. And I think that was true of a lot of Americans. And so I think you got to get to the bottom of it. You can't have a democracy if the people who represent that democracy are under attack. You just can't.
We talked about the role of the support staff that will do the work. Give the idea, at least from your experience, what's the job of the chairman during this process, and what are the jobs of the members of the commission themselves?
Well, the job of the chairman is simply to make sure you're doing the job right and steer the thing. We had 9 great people. There were 4 of them appointed by Democrats, 5 of them appointed by Democrats, 4 of them appointed by Republicans. I was appointed by the president. The job is to steer the commission and make sure it doesn't go off course. Now that's a balancing act. I mean, you got the press nipping at your heels in one way or another. You've got the Congress who wants to know what's going on. You got the American people. You got to bring them along. You got to use your subpoena power wisely, and you've got to always keep the mandate in mind. I mean, Lee Hamilton, who was my vice chair, and I used to go all the time to the members and say, what are the facts? Every time we went off base, what are the facts? Let's get back to the facts. And when we were writing the report, we found out a lot of the things people were arguing over were not the facts. They were the adjectives. So we took out the adjectives, and all of a sudden, everything was a lot less controversial.
This is Alan for our guest. He's in Brooklyn, New York, Democrats line. Alan, hello.
Good morning. I'm honored to speak with Governor Kean. He's one of the examples of the kinds of bipartisan servants that we have very few of today. One of my points here is about not just the fact you're looking for people who are no longer actively ambitious about advancing in office, but there's a very, very big difference between the kinds of public servants we have in the young crop of elected officials today and those who were raised before the fairness doctrine ended. And since I believe that is part of the reason that these events happened, I'm wondering, can we not have an artificial cap on the range of history you can look at as relating to the events of 1/6? Because I do believe that on the passing of Rush Limbaugh, who was the main product of the end of the fairness doctrine, the ability to begin to spew one-sided vitriol on the public airwaves without having opposing viewpoints, that began the trend that was transferred into the Internet, where you had silos of totally internal discussion, self-reinforcing echo chambers where no one heard an opposing viewpoint, and rumors and lies could spread rapidly to the point where individuals became like dry grass, where terrible ideas could spread rapidly and overcome individual will. So that's one point here, that can we look back far enough to examine the roots of these kinds of negative changes in the population in earlier policy changes.
Gotcha. That's Alan there in Brooklyn. Governor, go ahead.
Alan, you've hit one of the problems of this democracy right now. I mean, because I gave a talk the other day, and one of the questions I asked was, can you have a real democracy if there's no unified, believed source of information? And I'm old. I grew up at the time of Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite said something, and everybody believed it. That was the news. And then you argued your facts as to which way to go off that news. We don't have that anymore. There are very few people in the journalism today who have full credibility. And so that's, you put your finger on a real problem. But I don't think that can stop us from going ahead with this kind of investigation. And, that's another whole problem, which I think would be a very good problem for you to address in this program in the future.
To that end, Governor, then what are the best practices that you would advise when it comes to transparency of this commission's work?
Well, in the 9/11 Commission, we had public hearings. We very often, when we called witnesses, we made it public. Even when we called big witnesses, I mean, we called the Condi Rice, and who was in office at the time and right at the center of foreign policy for this country. We called her in a public hearing held in the United States Capitol, and it was televised. So we brought and as we found out things, we'd make them public so that the public was able to follow our investigation step by step. And we got criticism, we got praise, but we took all that into consideration as we moved ahead with the investigation. And so when we finally finished and we came to a conclusion, the people had come along with us. And so they knew what we had found, they knew how we had done it, and they knew why we'd come to the conclusion we did. And so by the time we made our report, it was supported by 70-80% of the American people.
How do you think then, from your experiences back then, how social media will impact this commission's work and also being televised?
Well, social media impacts everything, but you've got to be, to my mind, totally transparent. Everybody's got to know what you're doing every step of the way. People will criticize, and that's just fine. That's what democracy is all about. But you got to be transparent. You can't bring people along if you're doing everything in secret. And this is something I think politicians have got to learn. You got to bring people along with you, and they can agree with you or disagree with you, but they understand what you're doing. And as you go along and they follow you long enough, they get some confidence. And once they have confidence in what you're doing, you can get some support.
Let's hear from Sean, Lakeland, Florida, Independent Line. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. You said you wanted the facts. Well, it seems some very odd things went on January 6th. My spidey sense went off after I was looking at it on the news for 6 seconds. One thing, on January 5th, the court had just ruled that it was okay for the police to shoot a guy in the back because he had a knife in his hand. But yet not one police officer fired a shot that day when fellow officers was getting beat with poles, getting fire extinguishers thrown at them. You had the police open the gates. How all of that stuff, on top of that, how can a congressional laptop get stolen and y'all not know where it is when I can buy an iPhone and somebody steal it and I know exactly where it is? Are these the kind of things that you're going to find out about facts? I think this is way deeper that people are trying to make it seem. And everybody wanted to blame Trump, and I am by far not a Trump fan. But I think that, this is way bigger than him. There's no way that all of this happened by accident. It's not like a perfect storm.
Okay. Sean from Lakeland, there's your thought. Governor, go ahead.
Now, just the questions you raised, the questions that have got to be raised, and that's why you got to have an investigation, and one that the people have faith in, and the results will go with, the facts will go with wherever the facts lead, and hopefully we'll make recommendations to make sure it never happens again.
Holland, Michigan. This is Ryan. Next up, Democrats line. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. Sarah, thanks for your work, first of all. Thanks for C-SPAN. My degree is in economics, but I'm also very familiar with the events of 9/11. I do not appreciate the report that you guys put out. There's a book called 9/11 Commission, Omissions and Distortions. Among the chief ones is you do not explain how the buildings fell down. The commission stops its reporting at the initiation of collapse.
Caller, don't want to revisit history, but, as far as the question for a commission being looked at the January 6th, do you have something specific that?
I'm wondering if, when it comes to January 6th, which I'm also very interested in, if you're going to stop the timeline at a similar point, let's say when the first protesters get inside the Capitol.
That's Ryan there in Holland, Michigan. To that point, Governor, then, as far as a scope of looking at the events of what happened, a previous caller brought it up too. Do you look at just the events of January 6th, and how far do you go back to examine the scope of things that led up to it?
You go back as far as you have to. I mean, in 9/11 Commission, we went back to the formation of Al Qaeda to find out some of the ideas that were permeating behind the actual events. Eventually happened in the attack. So we had no restraints. The Congress didn't put any handcuffs on us and say you can only look at this or that. I think you sort of, it's like a string. It sort of unwinds and you follow it as long as it unwinds until you get the facts. And so I wouldn't put any constraints in this commission. I would say, look, bottom line is, how did it happen? Why did it happen? And make recommendations so it won't happen again. And I wouldn't have any other restraints.
One more call. This will be from Sarasota, Florida. Mary Ellen is next. Republican line.
Good morning. I'm happy to hear that you'll be looking at the foundation. And I do think that you need to explain to us why the Capitol was unprepared. Seems to me only Chief Son has been the one that has paid the price for the failure of law enforcement to protect the Capitol. They're supervised by the Capitol Police Board, and those are elected members of Congress and the Senate, and the Sergeant of Arms from the House and from the Senate, and the Mayor Bowser of D.C., and the D.C. National Guard unit. We need to know if they all had advanced knowledge and why did they fail to act. And as far as going through the foundation, we've had riots over the summer. 25 people have died, $1.5 billion of damage. That ideology and those lawless actions have to also be investigated and examined because it's all one and the same.
Okay, Mary Ellen, thank you.
Mary Ellen, you ask a very, very important question, and one that's going to be at the heart of any investigation. Why was the Capitol so thinly defended? We knew all these people were in Washington. If it had been an athletic event, a Super Bowl, there would have been many more policemen ready because of the crowds, and they weren't. And they weren't there. Was there advance notice? And people said, some people hadn't noticed that there was some intents for violence. We don't know that, but people suppose there might have been. Well, if not, if there was, where were the policemen? Where were the National Guard? Where were the people who should have been defending the Capitol when they started to march from the White House to the Capitol? Hopefully people thought it was going to be peaceful, but peaceful or not, with that many people coming toward the Capitol, where were the police? And it shouldn't have been that thinly defended. So why that was and how it happened. That's what going to be at the heart of the investigation.
Governor, have you been asked to be part of this effort?
No, I think I would like I would like a fresh crew. We've done our job, but I think we can be an example because our report was accepted, is accepted still. But no, I think it's time for some. If the president calls, you almost never say no, but I think it's time for some fresh blood.
Tom Kean, who served as the governor of New Jersey, also the chair of the 9/11 Commission. Governor, thanks for your time today.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your listeners.